All right, so today we're going to do a deep dive into John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. We're going back to the 1930s.
Okay.
Yeah, to the Great Depression,
Right.
specifically to the Salinas Valley in California.
Right.
And you're really going to see how Steinbeck just masterfully kind of weaves together these themes of friendship, loneliness, the harsh realities of life for these migrant workers, all against this backdrop of, economic hardship.
Yeah, I think what's so interesting about this story is obviously it's about a specific time and place, but it really is about kind of these universal human experiences
Right.
of wanting a better life and chasing dreams and facing the, sometimes pretty brutal realities of the world.
Yeah, for sure. And I think at the center of this whole story is this really powerful and kind of heartbreaking relationship between George and Lenny.
Yeah.
These two guys are, migrant workers. They're drifting from job to job. And really their friendship is the only constant thing in their lives.
And it's a friendship that's built on this really striking contrast, too, between their personalities, their abilities. You've got, George, he's quick, he's a thinker, he's always trying to keep them both safe. And then you have Lenny, who's got this, mind of a child. He's got this immense physical strength, but he can't control it.
Yeah. And right from the start, you see that, George is always taking care of Lenny. He's constantly having to remind him what to do, what not to do. It's almost like a parent-child relationship.
It is. And that's part of what I think makes the dynamic so compelling. There's a real tenderness there, a genuine care. But at the same time, there's this constant undercurrent of anxiety. Because George knows Lenny is capable of things that he doesn't even understand.
Right. And that kind of leads us to one of the things that I think Steinbeck does so brilliantly in this story, which is the foreshadowing.
Oh, yeah.
He plants these little clues, these subtle hints that something bad is coming. And it's almost like you can feel the tragedy building as you're reading it.
Mm-hmm. That opening scene by the Salinas River, I think, is such a perfect example of that.
Right.
It's this peaceful, almost idyllic setting. And yet there's this sense of foreboding because George is telling Lenny, if you ever get into trouble, this is where you need to come back to.
It's like he's giving him an escape route, but he's also kind of sealing his fate. You just know that place is going to be important later on.
Exactly.
And not in a good way.
And then he takes us to the ranch.
Yeah.
Where George and Lenny find work. And this place is like a microcosm of the world outside. You've got all these different characters, they're representing different parts of society. They're all kind of bumping up against each other, creating this really tense atmosphere.
It's like a powder keg,
yeah,
just waiting to explode.
Totally.
And in a lot of ways, Lenny is the spark.
Yeah, so we're on this ranch, and almost immediately we meet some of these really important characters, like Slim, the jerk-line Skinner. Everybody just seems to respect Slim. He's got this kind of quiet authority about him. Like he's seen it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think Slim really represents kind of the ideal worker in a lot of ways.
Right.
He's skilled, he's reliable, he commands respect, not through, force or intimidation or anything, but just through his competence and his strength.
Yeah.
And he's the kind of guy other men look up to.
Yeah, for sure.
And he becomes a sort of moral compass in a way for George.
Yeah, definitely. And then, of course, you've got Curly, who's like the opposite of Slim.
Oh, yeah.
He's the boss's son. He's always, looking for a fight, always trying to prove himself. And he seems to have it out for Lenny, really, right from the start.
Yeah, Curly is almost like a caricature of the insecure bully.
Right.
Someone who just feels threatened by anyone who he perceives as stronger or more capable than him.
And he's just a constant source of tension on the ranch.
Yeah, he is. And then there's Curly's wife.
Right.
Who's, she's a really interesting character. I mean, she's the only woman on this entire ranch, and she just doesn't seem to have a place where she belongs.
Yeah. And I always think it's so significant that Steinbeck never gives her name.
Right.
She's just Curly's wife.
Yeah.
She's defined by her relationship to him.
Right.
And she's often seen as this kind of troublemaker,
Yeah.
Someone who's going to lead the men astray. But when you look closer, you see that she's lonely, she's bored, and she's really just looking for some kind of human connection.
Right. And George sees that. And he warns Lenny to stay away from her because he knows that Lenny, with his innocence and his tendency to just get into trouble, could very easily find himself in a situation that he can't get out of.
Yeah. And tragically, that's exactly what happens.
Right.
Lenny, drawn to Curly's wife, her softness, her beauty, he accidentally kills her.
Yeah.
And it's this, huge turning point in the story.
It sets in motion this chain of events that leads to that just really devastating climax.
It's so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because you can see that Lenny never meant to hurt anybody, but his actions have these just irreversible consequences.
It's that moment where George has to really confront the reality that he can't always protect Lenny.
Right.
And that sometimes even the most, innocent intentions can have just tragic outcomes.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the whole idea of intention versus impact.
Yeah.
And so that kind of leads us to this most gut-wrenching decision in the entire book, which is when George, knowing that Quirrell and the other men are going to want revenge, decides to kill Lenny himself. He thinks it's the only way to really spare Lenny from a much more brutal and painful death. Yeah, and this moment, this decision has been debated by, readers and critics for decades. I mean, was it an act of mercy? Was it a selfish act? Was there another way? Steinbeck doesn't give us easy answers.
Yeah.
And he leaves it up to us, I think, to kind of grapple with this moral dilemma. What would you do?
Right. And what's so powerful about that scene, that final scene, is, it takes us back to that peaceful place by the river where the whole story began.
Right. Full circle.
Right. But with this incredibly tragic twist. The place that was supposed to be his escape route becomes the place where he meets his end. It's interesting, though, because even though it is so sad, there's also this, really incredible sense of love and compassion in the way that George does it. You know what I mean? Like, he tells Lenny to picture their dream farm, to focus on that.
Right.
Like that vision of happiness right before he does it.
Yeah, it's such a heartbreaking moment, but it really shows the depth of their friendship,
Yeah.
George wants Lenny's last moments to be filled with hope and peace.
Yeah.
And that image of the life that they both wanted.
Right. Even though it was never going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
It really does make you think about the nature of dreams and how they can give us the strength
Right.
to keep going, even when things are just awful.
Yeah. And that's one of the big themes, I think, of Mice and Men.
Yeah.
It's about that power of dreams to sustain us,
Yeah.
but also the danger of clinging to them too tightly, when they clash with the way things actually are.
Right. And we see that not just with George and Lenny,
Right.
but also with Candy,
Right.
who's, putting all of his heart and all of his soul and his savings
Everything.
into this dream of
Yeah.
this farm. Because for him, it's like it represents escaping this future where he's just seen as useless.
Totally. Candy's character, I think, really highlights the plight of those who are, marginalized by society.
Right.
He's a reminder that the American dream, this idea of, achieving success through hard work, it wasn't always possible for everyone,
Right.
especially during the Depression.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you've got Curly's wife,
Right.
whose dream is, Hollywood.
Yeah, this glamorous life.
But that gets just totally shattered because of, just the limits placed on women at the time.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, she's trapped.
Yeah.
She's in this loveless marriage.
Mhm.
She's stuck on this ranch.
Yeah.
Doesn't fit in. And she's constantly seeking attention, validation,
Mhm.
because she doesn't know where else to go.
Steinbeck's showing us how each of these characters, they're all searching for something more,
Right.
something better, but they're limited by just their circumstances.
Yeah. And it's a story that, even though it takes place so long ago, it still feels so relevant today
Yeah.
because it speaks to these just basic human experiences, loneliness, isolation, this need for connection.
Absolutely. And what makes Of Mice and Men such a powerful and lasting story is that it doesn't give us easy answers.
Right.
Yeah.
It leaves you with questions. It leaves you with sadness, but I think also with a deeper understanding of just how complex people are.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Of Mice and Men, we want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
What do you think Lenny's life would have been like if he had stayed hidden in that cave
Oh, wow.
by the river? Would he have been better off alone? Or was his bond with George, even though it ended tragically, the thing that really gave meaning to his life? It's something to think about as you reflect on the story and, its impact. So thanks for joining us. And until next time, keep exploring